Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. Each week we talk about heart rate variability and how it can be used to improve your overall health and wellness. Please consider the information in this podcast for your informational use and not medical advice. Please see your medical provider to apply any of the strategies outlined in this episode. Heart Rate Variability Podcast is a production of Optimal LLC and Optimal HRV. Check us out at optimalhrv.com. Please enjoy the show. Welcome, friends, to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. I am so excited for my guest today. I have worked harder to get Noël on the show than any other guest that I've had. And so I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation. I first came across her work in the AAPB evidence-based 4th edition on optimal performance, chapter 28. I got it up. I was rereading it and I was really impressed with her work on this and just wanted to interview her, and I finally got her on the show. So Noël, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. For our audience, just give us a quick introduction of yourself.
I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the invitation, Matt. It's fun to be here. I'm excited. Heart rate variability is a passion point of mine, but probably the thing that I am least qualified in. Like, I'm certified in biofeedback, but my specialty has been more neurofeedback. So I'll start with how I got into this field. My master's degree is in clinical health psychology. So from that, I was also lucky enough to be at a great program at Northern Arizona University that incorporated biofeedback into that master's level program, which is kind of rare, actually. And so I was fortunate when I finished, one of my mentors, Dr. Larry Stevens, connected me to a person some of the listeners might know, Dr. Sarah Wyckoff. She was over at the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and she was leaving. At the time, she was only master's level, so she was leaving to go to Germany to get her PhD, and they needed a position filled over there in Tempe. I was, in the right place at the right time, so very lucky to take over that adjunct faculty position starting in 2009. And now that university is the Sonoran University. Some people might know that, but it's a naturopathic medical school. So I had the fortune of working with naturopathic physicians who were doing their thing, while I got to implement the biofeedback, the neurofeedback on my clinical student rotations, as well as private rotations over there. So it was a really fun position. I also got to teach the biofeedback and neurofeedback classes alongside Dr. Leslie Sherlin and another naturopathic physician, Dr. John Dye.
Very cool. So is heart rate variability on your radar? Because I think it's also fascinating, the relationship between biofeedback and neurofeedback. In some ways, very separate science. I mean, we're looking at different parts of the nervous system, though, obviously an integrated whole. So I'm kind of curious when heart rate variability and kind of how that informed both your work with biofeedback, but also neurofeedback as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And when I teach kind of the intro class for biofeedback, what I remind people is that it used to be EEG biofeedback. So neurofeedback is now its own field because there's so much specificity to the brain, right? It's become its own niche. However, in the beginning, when you just look at the root words here, we're just talking about using objective data, mirroring that back to the client so that they can make changes and improvements to their physiological state, whether that's central nervous system or peripheral at the end of the day. So that's an easy way to kind of simplify it, I think. And what I actually started in was biofeedback. When I first was trained at NAU, I didn't do neurofeedback at all. I was only basically EMG and HRV, but obviously trained in skin conductance and, temperature and all of it as well. But then when I went to the naturopathic medical school, they had just a higher population for neurofeedback. And so I quickly got trained up in that, got certified in neurofeedback, hooked up with some great mentors, Dr. Leslie Sherlin being one of them, and really started to focus in on that and understanding QEEG and understanding neurofeedback, it all obviously works together. That's my favorite part. That's, health psychology, the idea that we're a system, mind and body connection. So obviously they work together. And when we think about neurofeedback and how that works with biofeedback, heart rate variability specifically, obviously we know there are some EEG states that are more consistent with that relaxed state, more your theta alpha, slower frequency bands consistent with the relaxation response that we are typically cultivating with biofeedback.
Awesome. And with your focus then, where I got introduced to you initially, with looking at optimal performance. I'm curious how, again, bringing those two aspects of your work together, how is this informed? Not only just maybe health and wellness, but then looking at optimal performance and probably high stress situations.
Yeah. Well, I was really lucky. Again, I feel very fortunate in my career. In addition to working at the Naturopathic Medical School, I linked up with Dr. Leslie Sherlin, and we started working in a startup technology company where we were building a mobile EEG device. And we were fortunate enough to have a contract with Red Bull High Performance over in Santa Monica. And because of that, therein lies the connection to high performance. So we were very fortunate to get to do a lot of EEGs, as well as we did do some biofeedback measures, but mostly we focused on the EEG of high performers. And so we built a database of elite performers, everything from your top Division I athletes to your world-class athletes, to your Olympians, to your Fortune 500 executives. We had the good fortune of collecting all this EEG data. And then we also were, backfilling that with what does the research say about performance protocols and what's best for our brain in terms of optimizing that performance. And so we were, combining that into the assessment as well as the training protocols for that mobile EEG system that we were designing, which I believe that work that we did and the research that we published in that was why we were invited to write the chapter for optimizing performance.
So I'm curious, Red Bull. Are you still associated with Red Bull? I want to be careful if you. Okay, so
I wish I was.
Something that I may, from a health perspective, encourage people to really look at the ingredients before consuming, and that they're sponsoring neurofeedback. Did you do neurofeedback while people drank a Red Bull? Because I just have to ask that question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I will deny all knowledge about what was consumed or not when we were not doing EEGs. I certainly loved the High Performance Center, and I think that Dr. Andy Walsh over there, who is leading the charge over there, there's a couple other people who we were highly connected with, and they obviously were recommending healthy things to their athletes. But sponsorships are sponsorships. So
yes, sure they are, and no judgment here whatsoever.
Yeah.
And as a beverage I've consumed, earlier in my life as well. So you had this amazing opportunity to work with, some of the top performers in different areas of our culture and society. I'd love to just hear what you took away from that experience. Doesn't need to be necessarily scientific, but just kind of the impressions that you got, insights that you got into this population that we may aspire to be in one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, it's a broad question, right? So we'll, kind of tangent here a little bit, I'm sure,
awesome.
as we meander through this answer. Yes. But, I think the number one thing is that with a high performance population, a tiny percent of increase or improvement, I should say improvement, not increase always, it matters, right? Yeah. These people they are just on the very edge of what is possible. They are, especially with Red Bull, because Red Bull, they were doing all kinds of crazy stunts. So, what was fun about working with that population, highly motivated, from clinical populations,
Yes.
compliance is always an issue. Compliance is definitely still an issue, but these people are much more motivated than your just run-of-the-mill client that comes in, say, to the naturopathic medical center, right?
Yeah.
They are looking for that tiny, tiny edge that can give them that competitive advantage. And so that's probably the thing that makes them the most fun to work with. On the other side of that, they're some of the most, I love the term time deprived, but they have so many demands on their time, whether it's from sponsors and doing things that are related to marketing, or things that you don't even think about are related to just making a living for them. So they're a really difficult population to capture. And thinking about, as I was reviewing some of the both of the articles, the chapters, 2016, and then we revised it in 2022. I think that's a thing that came out or reminded me as well, is that this is a difficult population to measure, just purely from the perspective of they are very busy. They are often traveling. And so that was one reason that we were developing a mobile device, is to try to catch them where they were, as opposed to expecting them to come into an office. And with biofeedback and neurofeedback, the research clearly suggests that more consistency in the training, not unlike everything else, I think, but, consistency in the training, as well as, condensing the training time down a bit. So you're doing 2 to 3 sessions per week rather than one session every week and a half or so, seems to be more effective. And so, that's one of the challenges with this population, is just catching them and trying to get them into a training pattern, as well as, making sure that you're getting the assessment data. So I think that's one of the things that's most remarkable about this population, is while they are very motivated, they are, very difficult to capture.
Yeah, I gotta ask it, and you may or may not have touched on this specifically, but when I think about Red Bull athletes, the ones I resonate would be a very strong word, but as a snowboarder myself, I think about like the Shaun Whites of the world and other people who I don't like to go upside down while snowboarding. Is not intentional. These folks may do it like 5 or 6 times in a pipe. Like that's just incredible. Or when I think of Red Bull, I also think about that dude who like went up in a satellite and dropped down to Earth. And I'm curious about and I think CEOs might experience just the same level of intensity throughout their typical day or week as well. Folks who might not, at least from our outside perspective, think about emotional regulation and relaxation as part of their performance. And I'm just curious, did you get any insight to maybe a side of these folks, whether it was just a motivator to be more relaxed or be able to unplug, then maybe just as the outside perspective, is these folks are running at 11 24/7 nonstop, and as soon as they go down to like a 9, they Red Bull it up to an 11 again.
Well, I think what you're hinting at is something that we hypothesized about, but did not really have enough data to fully support this. However, I feel pretty confident about this, that there was a big difference between your traditional, ball and stick sport athletes. We looked at a lot of baseball players, basketball players, like your more traditional sports like that, versus what you're referring to, which is your action sport athletes. And what we noticed from a baseline EEG perspective, again, anecdotal here, but was that your action sport athletes tended to just run a little bit lower, which means they may be seeking out certain activities that naturally increases their cortical activation, right? So they're looking to be revved up a bit, whereas your more traditional athletes, traditional sport athletes, they were tending to run pretty high in terms of fast frequency beta. Just at their baseline, they didn't have a ton of alpha in their resting state. And so what we were seeing is those people are more your stereotypical type A overachieving high performers, whereas your action sport athletes at rest, they actually were able to downregulate a bit.
Hmm.
But we, again, anecdotally also, from their self-reports noticed that sometimes that was correlating to challenges in terms of engagement in things that they were not interested in.
Yeah.
Made it a little
Fascinating.
bit different.
Fascinating. So I'm curious, you did the Red Bull thing. What can fill us in? What has happened as your career has progressed?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. I was able to take on a leadership position with that company. The product that people might know is Versus. That was the headset that we
Yeah.
built. The company itself, went through a couple of iterations as startup technology companies do, but Sense Labs is the one people might recognize. But was fortunate enough to lead the company as CEO in the end and help them through a micro acquisition. I took some time off, and then I also about in 2022, around February, March 2022, started working on another startup technology company, Amplio AI. The idea being, let's broaden what we're working on. So obviously kind of went from that high performance piece to, okay, how do we get this in the hands of more people? How do we I don't dumb it down is the only thing that I can think of. It's not the right thing, but it's just simplify it. So almost like that minimum effective dose. So does everybody need neurofeedback? I don't know. But could everybody benefit from understanding their physiology better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what we were trying to do at Amplio was we partnered with Aura Ring, and we were looking at creating a digital twin. And using AI and working on pulling in some of the physiological data, also self-report data, with the intention of creating a software that would interact with a person throughout the day and help them identify their internal physiological state, connect that to their emotions, and start to be able to self-regulate a bit better.
Mm.
It was a really fun project. I had a great time. It was a very short stint, just over a year. Unfortunately, as startup technology companies go, didn't come through with secondary funding from the Department of Defense. We got a first contract, but not a second contract, and then just couldn't get the investments there. So
Yeah.
I have then moved on, and as you know now,
Could I stop you just for a second? You threw out a nugget there that I don't want to let go, because some of our listeners are probably familiar, others aren't, but I just got to dig in a little bit to digital twin. I wonder if you could define that. And I gotta just ask, is you bringing in this expertise on the brain and nervous system? Just how do you bring all that together with this really, I think, exciting concept of a digital twin?
Yes. Digital twin, there lots of people refer to it, I think, in different ways. So it probably means different things to different people. But how we were using that term was the idea that we were collecting enough physiological data throughout the day to help mirror the physiological state of what that person was doing. And so then with the software, what our intention was to, throughout the day, inquire, where are you at? How are your emotions? What's going on in your life right now? With the intention of creating enough basically personalized database for that person so that then it could get smarter, again, using AI then to get smarter and smarter about the recommendations. And this was actually a shift for me, more from the neurofeedback, which we were doing with Versus, now over to the biofeedback, which was then going, we had some recommendations that we were going to offer about, whether it was breathing or mindfulness exercises, going for a walk, paying attention to what they're consuming, ultimately kind of a broad-based health app. And our first target audience in that we thought would be most effective at tackling burnout, because burnout in 2022 especially was really, really high. I don't know how, I haven't looked at the stats in the last probably 8 months, but when we were talking about this, we're looking at, I think it was 2021, 47 million people left their jobs voluntarily. So our goal was, how do we help the companies? So, that's an easy way in. You get your foot in the door. You help the companies, you're reducing the bottom line for the company because you are reducing turnover, you're reducing absenteeism, you're reducing disengagement, you're improving productivity, hopefully. But at the end of the day, you're trying to keep these people from burning out and leaving or needing to be fired or whatever the case is. So that was kind of our idea, was how do we create this digital twin that promotes health for the individual, which then ultimately is a positive effect for the organization culture.
Yeah, because I think the AI offers such an amazing opportunity, but the struggle is like, that our team is looking at is you could give ChatGPT your current HRV reading, and give them everything you got, even though I'm still not sure it's ready to tell us what a SDNN score and an RMSSD score and a high frequency score mean together. I don't know if anybody is quite yet ready to tell us that, artificial or just natural intelligence wise. But and then to get enough inputs, which why I love how you were thinking about this, to give meaningful suggestions is because ChatGPT will give you I put last week's average, month's average, and it gives me really good feedback. The only problem is tomorrow I get the same feedback. And the next day I may get a little bit different if it's a different score. But every time it's higher, I get a little bit the same feedback every time. So very quickly it becomes just repetitive. It's good, but repetitive. And that's why I love how you were thinking, is to get enough information to say, okay, in the state you're in right now, here's an idea for a coping skill or something to help you regulate. Because it is a huge challenge that it's not easy to overcome in a meaningful way, at least.
That's right. I mean, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you're
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
so it is really important. And I should specify, I am not the AI expert. I had an awesome co-founder, Trung Tran, an AI expert. And so I was bringing in more the biofeedback component to what we were doing. And then he was the master in terms of the algorithms and all of that. But together we were putting this idea that it's just like in office, right? You have to have enough data on that particular person, because at the end of the day, what matters to the person is not that their SDNN improved. It's not that their theta decreased. Yeah. It's that they function better in their life. And so if you can kind of pull that back to that view, that's what I think will make it the most meaningful, and just remind people that it's about relative change. The absolute value is less important.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, let's keep going with your journey here. I love what I'm learning about you in this. I had no idea about some of your background here.
Yeah, it's a very surprising trajectory, to be honest. Like when I went to school, I just assumed I'm going to be, a clinical psychologist, and I'm going to sit in an office, and I'm going to talk to people about their problems. I really enjoy talking to people. But what I just fell into in terms of the technology startup world, I really enjoy that as well. And it's what I think about it when I had originally planned to go, as a clinical psychologist was my game plan. And I thought, I will help first responders, because then you're helping create a ripple effect, right? You're helping the people that help the people.
Yeah.
So I feel like I kind of just transitioned, and now that idea was just transitioned into technology. Well, if you can, make this device or make this software that helps, it can easily help so many people at once.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So what was that next step on your journey? Because I'm trying to get where we met in our cross paths.
I know, it's funny, right? So that I have always done a lot of things simultaneously. I think probably like a lot of your guests, there's always a few irons in the fire. And so alongside, all these things that in the startup technology world that I was doing, I was also maintaining, my position at the naturopathic medical school, and making sure that I was staying up with that until COVID. COVID is when I officially left that brick and mortar position. But that provided a good opportunity to transition into more kind of like health and wellness. And so I created my company, Tailored Intentions, which is my personal consulting company. So do more just like, overall health and nutrition and health and wellness with that. I try to get people to understand it's not about weight loss. It's about, health and how do I think that sometimes people forget because they get so hyper focused on the thing that feels outward, but at the end of the day we're a system and we have to pay attention to our mind and our body and our hydration and all our sleep and all the healthy habits basically.
Yeah.
So was doing that again kind of simultaneously. I was invited to be the conference planning committee chairperson for the International Society, ISNR, International Society for Neuroregulation and Research. And in that capacity, that is how we met, because I think that I met you the very first time at AAPB's conference. Yeah, you guys were a vendor, and I was there in that capacity looking for other vendors to come to our conference. So with that, I've had the good fortune of being part of the planning team who puts together the conference that brings together some of the best minds in the neuroregulation field. So very fortunate on that.
Yeah, so give a little pitch after being to last year's conference. I would love just to give you a second as folks who might have gotten here more so on the one side with the biofeedback. ISNR, why would you encourage maybe the bio nerd, the HRV nerds, neuro curious folks like me? Like I'm like, oh God, do I have to learn all that stuff too? Why should they maybe Google the conference and learn a little bit more about the organization?
Yeah, so the organization, isnr.org, you can find out all the information there. But realistically, AAPB and ISNR way back used to be connected because, like I said at the beginning, it was all one field, right? Biofeedback, right? But obviously, specificity in terms of the different topics created their own niche. So we have our own organizations, and it really allows, honestly, just a doubling up of the content. Because if you go to AAPB, you're going to find all this amazing information about the peripheral primarily. There is some neuro there, but mostly it's peripheral, right? And then if you go to ours, it's mostly neuro. There are some things, we had Ina and David talk last conference. So there are definitely some people that are talking more about the biofeedback at ISNR, but I think the advantage in having both organizations is that you just get more time. So there's a little bit of overlap. You do see some of the same people at the conference, but you also see a whole different type of attendee. So you're getting people that are more in the neuro rehabilitation or psychiatry or those kinds of even physical therapists at the ISNR conference, and then AAPB. I can't speak to their conference as well about their attendees, but I know it's a slightly different population, and you're getting a little bit more, it seems like, counselors and that. So
yeah. Awesome. So one of the other things, and you may have just had this from the very beginning, but I want to ask the question anyway, is I know with my background in mental health, things like food, nutrition, movement, sleep, we're a little bit on the mindfulness side. We that was out, in the orbit that if you were the hippie in the room, this guy, you might, bring your classmates into a dark room and meditate with them. And they all thought I was very, very odd for doing so, but you gave me a group project, so I did it. But it took me a long time when we think about the mind to connect that to things like nutrition and movement and sleep. And was that just there? Did you get just that early on? Or I'm curious how, your real understanding about neurobiology really brought you into areas now that I feel like I have to know about with these more traditionally physical health because of their impact on the nervous system and the functioning of our mind.
Yeah, I feel so fortunate that I went to the program that I went to. I can't speak for other health psychology programs, but all of it was just baked into my program. So in my first year, second semester, but first year, we did a weight management group where we actually brought in people from from the community, and myself and another student therapist would, lead this whole semester long weight loss, group. And it was kind of a mindfulness type of weight loss group. We had the red light, the yellow light, and the green light. I don't know if you've seen those things, but basically like some foods are red. You only have a couple of them. Some are green. So you have lots of them, everything in between. Anyway, so just very fortunate. All of that was kind of baked into my program. In addition to biofeedback, I was also trained in hypnosis. So that's, kind of unique to have all of that rolled into one, as well as having the opportunity to actually be supervised. So obviously, that's not a part of every master's level program. And that was really fun, where you got to see patients from the community and, be supervised in that. It was, yeah, just really lucky. They really hit home the holistic approach. We have to, if you're not sleeping well, then, what you eat matters, but it might not matter as much as if you were sleeping better or vice versa, or hydration or movement, talking about the benefits of exercise. And as an athlete, I played sports my whole life. I went to school to play for Northern Arizona University golf there. And, being a former athlete, you have that same mentality of like, hey, every little variable matters in terms of performance, as well as just overall output and function, like how well you're enjoying your time.
Yeah.
So I feel just very fortunate with a lot of the coaches that I had, weight training coaches that were awesome and taught me a lot about nutrition in addition to, lifting and all of that stuff. So
Awesome.
lucky.
Yeah, well, now I'm really excited to ask you this question because it's one that I want you to look ahead. As somebody who's been on the cutting edge of innovation with the work that you shared and your brilliant resume that you've created over the years, where do you think, when you look in a crystal ball and as technology evolves at a unprecedented state now with AI doing what it's doing, and everything, I guess quantum computing is right around the corner from what Google did last week. Couldn't explain it to you, but it's closer than it was last week. So I just kind of wonder, as you look forward 5, 10 years, having been in this field now for a while, I'm just curious, where do you think we're going with this? Where do you think, when we talk about biofeedback and neurofeedback, 5, 10 years from now, what are we going to be talking about? What is episode 1200 when I have you back on to talk about this new development that's come out? What do you think we'll be exploring in the near future?
I think it's a really great question, and I would not pretend for a second to know that I have that crystal ball.
Oh, we don't hold you to it. If you're wrong, we will not have you back. Trust me.
Right.
If you're right, we will have you back. But...
I know. I think that what we have seen, just in terms of how quickly our technological advances have allowed us to improve our health and our health span, I think that is a really promising future for us, because I think a lot of people get scared about technology, and I'm sure that there are things to be scared of, right? Replacing jobs and that. But at the same time, I think that we will continue to develop technologies that advance us as humans in addition to our society. So at the end of the day, I think that while of course there's always some bad actors and you can make a case for being fearful, I think there's been so much positive that has come out of our ability to better quantify ourselves, right? And allow that to give us better treatments, better outcomes. And so I am hopeful that we will continue to use our technology whether it's algorithms or the actual hardware, to continue to advance us and our understanding of what's going on inside. I always tell people, like, my passion point is helping people understand how to harness the power of their physiology. If more people understood how to make it work for them instead of against them, just in and of itself, you'll be less stressed, less perceived stress, more proactive rather than reactive, and the interactions between people, I think, can really improve. I think where sometimes I can see the breakdown in that, because I do tend to be a very optimistic person, but I think sometimes the breakdown is that technology allows us to isolate. And I think that isolation, as we learned in COVID, is a very dangerous thing. And so I'm just hopeful that the technology, while it continues to evolve in the medical way and allow us to, improve our health spans, I hope that it also continues to evolve in the social perspective in a way that allows us to feel more connected rather than isolated and comparison. I don't know what else to say about that, right? But
yes.
I think that's a little tricky, the way that technology is evolving in that space.
And I'm curious where obviously the digital twin stuff, but as you see AI, because this is one of the things that's just fascinating to me, is that I think we'll be able to ask questions. Like, I really want to know what the difference between SDNN and RMSSD and high frequency means. Now, I may be the only one in the entire world that thinks that matters. And the reality is it might not. But like, I feel like we live in this nerdy world of complex algorithms and brain waves and things that maybe only a small fraction of 1% of the population could really define accurately. I'm still working on the frequency domains. Like, I think I could do it, but I go back. Fred Schaefer did a great episode. I've just got to go back and keep listening to it over and over again. So, I just, anything that you see that might with AI open up new understandings of the nervous system, the brain. I think the mind is an interesting thing because it doesn't really show up on the brain scan, but we talk about it a lot, and a lot of neuroscientists don't believe it even exists. So I'm just curious, like, do you see any questions out there that we may be able to answer, even if we can't throw it into ChatGPT currently and get it?
If I have anything in mind, that's something that I'm expecting AI to be able to answer. But what I think, just because I don't think I've thought about it enough or taken enough time to really think about what that ultimate question is. But also, I think that's a moving goalpost, right? Yeah. I think that the beauty of AI, what I see is that everything is nuanced, everything is layered. And just to your point, right? As much as you think you understand something, either one of us, right? As much as we think we understand something, you read 5 more research articles and you think, well, dang, I thought I understood that. Yeah. I thought I had that, right? Or you read 5 more and you're like, well, but is that connecting to that? And so what I am hoping that AI does is help us all continue to put the pieces of the puzzle together quicker. Right. So being able to pull so much data at one time to be able to make those connections that we would not have otherwise been able to make because we couldn't possibly pour over that much research in one go, if that makes sense. So I think that's my hope, how AI will be used and how it will benefit us. I don't know. I don't actually, out of the gate, I don't believe right now that AI is going to, by itself, solve anything. I think that it's going to be a really amazing assistant to help us solve things, make us solve problems faster.
Yep. And I'm ready for that future.
Yeah, right.
Right now, I just like, it does about half the time, and then the other half the time it gives me a bunch of nonsense. So I'm ready for it. Like, book my flight and hotel room, and you know exactly when I can beat rush hour traffic in Denver to get to the
Let's do
airport and get there,
it.
like all that stuff. But yeah, I think I totally agree with you. It's like I think we have to still formulate the right and other questions, but the fact something can go in quickly somehow, read 100 articles on this topic and give us insight that we may not have gotten unless we wrote a book on the subject. I think is an incredibly exciting time to get into. So
I agree. Ready
very
for it.
well, I am excited to keep exploring that future with you, my friend. And Noel, I gotta say, I read your chapter. I was like, I gotta get her on the show. I met you. I'm like, not only is she brilliant, she is also a fun human being to hang out with and
Oh.
talk to, and a really damn good salesperson, if I could say, because I did go
Thank
to
you.
Chicago and get a booth to get you on this show. And the fact
It's
that
a good martyr.
yes, ISNR has been a great audience for us as well. So I want to thank you for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. Hope you can come back and join us in the future as well. And we'll put information about Noelle, her work, in the show notes that you can always find on optimalhrv.com. Noelle, thank you so much, my friend. And
Thank you so much.
um, yeah, I loved exploring your story.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
All right, take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.